I can't see the interpreter.
Can you see the interpreter now? So I wanted to thank everyone for coming today. If you're having trouble, it sounded like someone was having trouble seeing the interpreter, they should be pinned here or spotlighted here soon. So hopefully that helps. If not, go ahead and drop a message in the chat and we will make sure that, that we get that fixed for you to the best of our ability. So thank you everyone and welcome to our webinar titled Leveling the Playing Field, Supporting Disabled Students and Early Career Professionals Through Mentorship. My name is Bridget Schramm and I'll be your host today. I'm a white female in my 30s with long brown wavy hair. My background is a nondescript home office with gray walls. I'm a PhD student in public health at Georgia State University and a graduate research assistant at the Center for Leadership and Disability. I'm also the student liaison for the student section or for the disability section of APHA. This webinar is being presented by the mentoring program through the disability section of APHA, which stands for American Public Health Association. We would like to thank AUCD for their support, providing their technical expertise and providing the platform to offer this webinar. Oops. So before we hear from our amazing panelists and presenters today, I have a few session and accessibility reminders to go through. So first, we do have closed caption and CART services available. So you can turn these on at the bottom screen near the chat box. Please, we are asking all attendees to turn off their camera during presentations. This will allow for the main presenters to be easily visible as well as our interpreters throughout the session. You can pin videos and speakers. We will be trying to do this as well. But if you would like to more control on that, you can choose the 3 dots that appear in the top right of their picture. We do encourage everyone to use the chat box for questions today. We are asking to try and enter those during pauses in the presentation, as some screen readers read those out loud over the presenters. So if you can kind of send those in those little pauses, that would be helpful for those using screen readers. And we will attend to the full Q&A at the end. We do ask if you do come off mute and ask questions during the Q&A today to introduce yourself before you ask your question. And I want to let everyone know that we do have slides and a recording will be available online, as well as we do have an attendee handout that includes an outline of today's presentation, as well as presenter information, key takeaways, and then some resources that will be mentioned throughout. I just put a link into the chat box, and that is where where that handout and where our slides can be found today and into the future. So as you attend and learn from our panelists in the webinar today, feel free to live tweet letting people know you are here and that and anything you may be learning. You can do this, if you do this, please use the hashtag #dismentoring, as well as you can mention the @APHA disability, @public health, @dis and higher ed, or any other hashtags or that you would like to associate with. So we have a great lineup of presenters and content for today. And so after I'm done speaking, we're going to have Meredith Williams and Hannah Mashisha take over for Making the Case. We're going to have a section on identity and intersectionality from Cindy and Sarita. Disclosure of disability status and discrimination will be covered by Chloe and Mike. We have accommodations and asking for help from Chloe and Courtney. Self-determinations and alternative paths and timelines will be covered by Meredith and Dot. And then the final topic will be allyship and co-instigator from Sarita and Meg. Almost every single one of our topics today have a student or young professional and mentor, so mentee-mentor combo to kind of give both perspectives and provide as much support and content as possible. And then we'll have a Q&A at the end. So I will now pass the mic off to our 2 main moderators today. So Meredith Williams and Hannah Mashisha, who are the student representatives for the mentoring program of the APHA disability section. Meredith is a PhD student in public health with a passion for promoting disability inclusion and mobilizing public health knowledge, frameworks, and strategies to meet the needs of the disability community. She has a background in patient and disability advocacy, firmly grounded in her own lived experience and experience consulting, speaking, teaching, developing trainings, conducting research, and providing technical assistance. Hannah is a doctoral student in the Counselor Education and Supervision Program at the Department of Counseling, Phyllis J. Washington College of Education of the University of Montana. She holds an MA from the University of Montana in Counselor Education, an MED from Addis Ababa University in Special Needs Education in Ethiopia, and a BA from University of Gondar, Ethiopia in Psychology. Hannah currently works with University of Montana's Rural Institute for Inclusive Communities and is involved in several projects. So I'm going to hand it off to you ladies now.
Hi everyone, this is Meredith. Can you hear me okay? Okay, so I'm Meredith. I have long brown, wavy, hasn't been cut since before COVID hair. I'm wearing a maroon shirt and behind me is a orange wall with a painting of a landscape hanging on it. I'm so happy that you all could join us today. So first we're going to start off with a little bit about who people with disabilities are. People with disabilities make up more than 25% of the US population, and that's a number that's only expected to increase with advances in medicine, improving survival rates, an aging population, and what we're seeing now with the pandemic. And what's more, nearly everyone will have a disability at some point in their lives. When we talk about disability for the mentoring program in particular, we're very inclusive. So we're including those that most people think about as having a disability. So you might think about a difficulty with mobility or seeing or hearing or learning or communicating. And also anyone with a chronic illness, a mental health condition, or really any condition where your activities or participation are limited to some degree, or you have to go about things in a little bit different way. And about 80% of us have disabilities that you might not notice when you first meet us and interact with us. People with disabilities are also very diverse along every dimension. We're overrepresented in populations that we prioritize in public health, including women, the LGBTQ+ community, racial and ethnic minority communities, veterans, those who are experiencing homelessness, and the list goes on and on. In our mentoring program, we see a great number of mentees who identify as members of 2 or 3 or 4 or more of these communities at the same time. As people with disabilities, we also have a lot to offer in school and the workplace. We tend to be very persistent and tenacious because we've had to be to navigate the barriers that are around us. For the same reason, we tend to be really flexible and creative problem solvers. We tend to be team players, so we know the importance of working together and making sure that everyone succeeds. And we're experts. We're talented and skilled in many fields. We're experts at the barriers that people experience to full and healthy functioning. We're experts at how systems work and how sometimes they don't work. And we're also really good at managing complex routines and competing demands and responsibilities at the same time. And on this slide, I have an image from the Disabled in Here project. It is an overhead shot of 6 disabled people of color talking and laughing at a rooftop deck party. Next slide, please. So what about students and professionals? Students and professionals with disabilities are really underrepresented in public health. We rarely see ourselves reflected in course content or among our faculty and our supervisors. Only about 7% of graduate students, 3% of physicians, and as low as 1.5% of full-time faculty self-report disabilities. And this is mostly because of barriers that have much less to do with our disabilities than the way in which school and work environments are designed. And we're going to talk about a number of these during the webinar today. And on this slide, I have a photograph of glasses resting upside down on a notebook. Next slide, please. So why is providing skilled mentorship to students and professionals with disabilities important? Well, it benefits mentees, it benefits mentors, and it benefits the field as a whole. As mentees, we're trying to navigate systems and environments that weren't designed with us and with different ways of being in, moving through, experiencing and thinking, communicating about the world in mind. So we need support. We need support finding and using resources. We need support developing networks, building our skills for disclosing our disability and advocating for ourselves and what we need in those environments, and support amplifying our voices when they're not being heard. Mentors can benefit in that they can better support, connect, and communicate with mentees with disabilities, better understand and anticipate our needs, which sometimes we might have trouble communicating about, or we might be hesitant to communicate about. And mentors can help us succeed, and in doing so, really capitalize on considerable talent, skills, and experience that we bring to the table. And finally, in the same way that diversity in gender, socioeconomic, and cultural background strengthens the public health workforce, we need the voices and perspectives of those of us with disabilities to engage and empower marginalized communities, including the many communities that intersect with the disability community, better determine priorities for research and public health action and more ethical ways to go about those, and to promote health equity. And what's more, we know that changes that promote full and equal participation for people with disabilities actually benefit everyone. So our field, and every field for that matter, stands to gain a lot. And on this slide, I have another image from the Disabled in Here project, and in it, a Latinx disabled woman and an Asian disabled woman chat and sit on a couch holding coffee mugs with a mobility scooter resting to the side. And now I'll turn you over to Hannah.
And before Hannah speaks, I just want to read out a comment that was added by Kashana. And she says, I want to add in something that I have seen. There is not enough change when it comes to disability. I feel we are constantly ignored when we speak up about our experience as disabled people. Thank you for adding that, Kashana. And go ahead, Hannah.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Meredith. My name is Hannah. I identify as Black and African. I have a short hair that's just pulled back. I'm currently wearing a black and white shirt. In my background, there is a gray wall with medium-sized paint with a butterfly. Today, I just want to share with you about the Disability Section Mentoring Program and what it is all about. Our mentoring program is initiated and founded by disabled students and scholars, and mostly founded based on their experiences of navigating academia and workplace. Our mentoring program in general is mentee directed program, and some of you might have submitted application to our mentorship program, or some of you might be new to the program and planning to apply. And you will find some questions that ask about your priorities and your goals. So the reason we ask those questions is we want to prioritize what is important for disabled students when they come to the mentorship program, and we want to match them with a mentor that is also working in those areas and that can support them navigate the academic environment as well as the work environment. Our primary goal is to provide one-to-one support and guidance for both students as well as early career scholars. And we accept students from who are enrolled in undergraduate program as well as working throughout their academic career. And this includes professionals and disabled workers who are in their career and their early years of their career. And just like Meredith was saying earlier, diversity is welcomed. We recognize that disabled individuals come from a different walks of life, and we want to have an environment that accepts and that prioritizes the value of the experience that disabled students and early career scholars bring into the table, whether in the professional development as well as in their work environment and personal environment. Our program is open for non-disabled students and scholars, especially if they are interested to work and study in the disability area. So they can participate either as a mentee as well as a mentor and focus on disability research and disability projects. Next slide. So our program has been in place for 2 consecutive years now. And the first matching happened in 2020 and the second matching happened in 2021. For the first time, we were able to match 32 mentee-mentor matches from 27 mentors and 38 mentees. So as you can see that we had more mentees in the program who are interested to learn and get guidance to navigate the system. And there are some mentors who were also matched with more than one mentees. And that approach continued in 2021, except that the number of matches has increased, which we are very much grateful and pleased because this shows that there are more disabled students as well as non-disabled students and early career scholars who are really interested to participate in the APHA disability mentoring program. In addition to the matching of mentees and mentors, we also do networking. So one way of learning from each other is creating a social platform where people can ask questions and share ideas and learn from each other. And for that, we have different ways of social media. So we have a Facebook page that is specifically private group Facebook page, specifically designed for the mentorship program. We have a Slack page and LinkedIn groups that help to connect people who are interested to join those conversations. We are part of the APHA annual meeting and expo student mentoring sessions, and we have been organizing and promoting our program and also sharing what we have been learning through the mentoring program and what we have heard from both the mentees and the mentors regarding their experience going through the program. This is our first webinar as a mentee webinar. However, we have participated in several previous webinars that are organized by APHA and other disability-focused mentorship programs. Next slide, please. So today, we would like to have this opportunity to just learn from each other. And we invited students, we invited mentors, we are creating this environment so that we can ask questions and learn from how other students and scholars navigated the system and learn from each other. So we will talk about what do we bring to the table as disabled students and early career scholars. This is about our identity and their intersectionalities. We will also talk about how we navigate the system of academy and workplace. How do we set goals? What is our self-determination like? Or how do we ask for help and accommodation? And we also will hear from the voice of the allies or co-conspirator. What does it mean to have an ally and to have someone who will walk along us as we navigate the system? So in order to do that, we invited the mentees, mentors, and we will also hear the voice of allies. With that, I will just direct you to Meredith to introduce the speakers of the next topic.
Everyone, this is Meredith again. So our first topic we're going to cover is identity and intersectionality. And so we're going to be joined by Cindy Petros and Sarita Nolan. Cindy Veronica Petros is a second-year MS occupational therapy student at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, a Wisconsin LEND trainee, and a co-leader of Disability Rights, Education, Activism, and Mentoring, or DREAM chapter at UW-Milwaukee. Cindy advocates for Black and Brown families with children with disabilities and the admission and retention of students of underrepresented groups in higher education. Sarita Nolan is a disability justice advocate at University of California, San Diego. She serves as underrepresented student officer for the University of California Student Association and is the founder of JADE, Justice, Advocacy, and Disability Education, a holistic disabled justice platform focused on empowering disabled students, faculty, staff, and alumni through community and support.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Meredith. And to start off, I just want to express the importance of identity in our disabilities. And to introduce myself as well, my name is Sarita Nolan. I'm a Black woman and I have medium length, like short locks, and wearing a black shirt with a blue necklace. And my virtual background is up here at sunset with the ocean behind me. And my pronouns are she, her, hers. And my disability pronouns are invisibly disabled, disabled woman, as well as neurodivergent. And being a disabled student as an undergrad, I've really found that I've had to piece together my identity myself. There wasn't really those sources of being proud to be disabled, where it's always felt like being disabled is something that's siloed off to an office of students with disabilities for accommodations and accessibility. But I've really found in becoming a disability advocate that there's so much more to disability. And I'll pass it to Cindy to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Cindy Petros. My pronouns are she, hers, and ella. I identify as a person with mood disorder. My Zoom background is a beautiful palm tree that's swaying at the beach. I am a Latina in her mid-30s with dark hair, shoulder length, and wearing a purple cardigan.
Awesome. And I just wanted to share a little bit more about the social model of disability, because you heard me use my disability pronouns, and disability pronouns are part of a social model of disability. Because disability currently within higher education and as our society really sees disability more as a social construct that prevents individuals with impairments from participating in full and engaged lives. So it feels like it's more seen as a modality of limitation rather than some of the strengths that were brought up in our opening slides. Being able to embrace a social model of disability is very much like in the LGBT community, being able to accept your identity for who you are completely and not feeling like you have to hide something. And bringing that into the construct of multiple social identities. And that for me can be from having my physical disabilities as well as my mental health disabilities coming together with who I am as a Black woman and an LGBTQ woman. So, yeah.
This is Cindy again. When I became aware of my disability, it was introduced to me as a person first language. So Cindy has a disability. Cindy has a mood disorder. And I believe that it's up to current times, many healthcare professionals and academic faculty have been educated under this model of disability of person first language. And I would say that it is difficult to manage a mood disorder, and there's a sense of loss, but definitely giving the right language to your identity, it's important. And Sarita and I have discussed how identity first language, it's so important, and not all of us identify that way, but it's good to keep it in mind that we do have pronouns for our disabilities. Sarita?
Yes, and those disability pronouns should be respected just as much as a gender pronoun. as how we prefer to be known as in our pronouns, whether we're in your presence or you're speaking about us. Because even when we're not there, it shows that you understand the tenets of nothing about us without us, and really understanding, centering us correctly. Because within intersectionality, it's just so important to understand that overlap into those disability pronouns as an aspect of who we are. And to describe our image that we have on this slide as well. So to the right, we have in pink letters a quote that says, intersectionality is about fighting discrimination within discrimination, tackling inequalities, tackling inequalities within inequalities, and protecting minorities within minorities. And we have a logo in the bottom right corner for the Center for Intersectional Justice with alternating Black, pink, and Black text for the 3 letters of this organization. And as much as I'm Black, I'm also as much disabled, as much as I'm LGBTQ. And it all comes together in ways that are so unique and inseparable. Cindy?
I will have to agree that with Sarita, our identities, and they belong, so they come hand in hand and cannot be separated. This does not mean that systems of oppression the barriers can be removed for your mentees. And it's pretty important to realize whether it is a barrier that is within the mentor's ability to support, to help get it out of the way. But definitely disability is a big part of who I am and my values in my life. But this side of me it's not always seen by everyone. I have to disclose it, and they'll talk about that later on. This harmony that takes to accept who you are takes a while. And I have been able to accomplish all the things that I didn't think I was going to be able to. I am a mother, I am a professional, I am a partner, and I think I'm proud of who I am despite my lows and my highs. And that has been, my disability has come with me along the ride. Thank you, Sarita. Next. This is Cindy again, and I will begin by describing what we have on the far right of the image. It's a text image adapted from the CRIAW/ICREF''S intersectionality wheel. It's a dartboard with a circle in the center with 3 rings that come out of it. The innermost circle has a bidirectional yellow arrow that points out to a text that reads, innermost unique circumstances. The second ring has a bidirectional orange arrow that points out to the text that says, a second aspect of our identity. The third ring has a bidirectional red arrow that points out to the text that says, third types of discrimination that impact identity. And there's a fourth ring and final ring with a bidirectional burgundy arrow that points out to the text that says larger forces and structures reinforce an inclusion. And this is a visual to kind of help identify how our intersectionality as students, as disabled students or students with disabilities can be approached. And Sarita, would you like to add anything before I give an example of it?
I think one thing that was, and this is Sarita again, one thing I find is really interesting about the intersectionality wheel that Cindy described is that it's really just like layering things together. It's like, if this was not a dartboard, but rather a cake with 4 layers and some icing, it's not like you can deconstruct that cake and just have like layer 3. You get everything together. Everything comes together and creates a unique set of oppression and privilege within ourselves. And with that, disability has this overall effect that we've never spoken about ableism. We speak about racism, we speak about feminism. And I think of everything within this dartboard. If this was a 4-layer cake, the icing would be the ableism that we never mention, because it's really important that we realize within our identities and our privilege that we all have the disadvantage as disabled people or people with disabilities, depending on what your disability pronouns are, that ableism is not said by our institutions to be just as wrong as racism. It's not just as wrong as feminism. It's not just as wrong as any of these things that are mentioned broadly. The way our professors treat us is condoned, and the ableism that comes with accommodations. So really beginning to inquire to your mentees about what is going on and how you can support their unique cake of privilege and barriers really begins to create an environment where you can empower their success as a student. And Cindy?
I think that was beautiful, Sarita. This is Cindy again. It is very important to engage in a lot of self-guided learning to identify your own identities, your marginalized identities and your privileged identities, because we all have them. It's also very important to do it and facilitate some of this learning for your mentee. I had an example of the intersectionality wheel. I approached my program early during the first semester and expressed a lot of interest on working on a thesis. Every semester, it's about 12 units of a load. So I was advised to leave it, and because the program was rigorous enough. And it was not recommended, although this thesis was accepted by other classmates engaged in thesis work. I was discouraged from it. And at that center circle, I think it was for me, I had to identify my unique circumstance. Where does Cindy, a mother, a person with a disability, a non-English native speaker, non-traditional student with a child with a neurodevelopmental disability, where do I fit into this, which felt like discrimination? So I think pointing out that we don't know where we're being discriminated, at what point, whether if it's one of the isms, the structures, or if it's one of our marginalized identities, our culture, or if it's just all of the above that affect us. Anything else, Sarita?
And this is Sarita again. I think just leaving off that each mentee is going to be different. They're going to be unique. They're going to be at a different place in their journey with their disability identity. And if you know that they're struggling, please use resources to educate yourself, and also make yourself aware of the resources on your campus to direct them to. If your campus has nothing, that's why we have Twitter. So I just want to say thank you so much. And I will direct back to the introduction of our next section. Thank you so much for having us both.
Thank you, Sarita and Cindy. Our next topic is going to be on disclosure of disability status and discrimination. And the speakers are Chloe Simpson and Dr. Mike McKee. Dr. Mike McKee is one of the founders of our mentoring program, I should mention. He is a family physician with clinical and research expertise in disability health. As a deaf physician, he is especially interested in advocating for the rights of deaf and hard of hearing patients to obtain equitable health care, including accessible communication. His research focus includes health disparities for individuals with various disabilities, health information accessibility, health literacy, and telemedicine applications. Dr. McKee is on the board of Association of Medical Professionals with Hearing Losses. He is also currently an appointed member of the Roundtable on Health Literacy of the National Academy of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine. And he will be joined by Chloe Simpson. Chloe is a PhD student at the West Virginia University in the College of Physical Activity and Sports Sciences with an adaptive physical activity focus. Her research interests involve investigating general physical educators' self-efficacy, beliefs in behavior management, 3D printing, assistive technology, and collegiate level adapted sport opportunities. With that, I will leave the floor to Chloe and Dr. Mike.
Thank you so much, Hannah. Hi, everyone. My name is Chloe Simpson. I am a white female. I have long, wavy red hair with moderate frizz. I'm wearing a navy blue shirt with a yellow undershirt, and I'm blushing and fidgeting pretty severely due to my nerves. I'm sitting in my office in front of a filing cabinet and a door with post-its that read, "Mask it so I don't forget my mask when I leave." I've been tasked to give the student perspective on disability and disclosure and accommodation. These are topics that are close to my heart, and this is my first time publicly sharing my position as a disabled student. So I'm here, I'm gonna talk about my trajectory of disability disclosure, and later there will be some overlap and maybe repeated stories in sharing my experience gaining accommodations. My journey and self-identity is something I'm working on, and from K-12 to higher education experience, it can feel like multiple Chloes have existed, leaving me wondering where I fit. It may simply be summarized as, in K-12, I was labeled as a student with learning disabilities, and in entering higher education, I worked my best to pass, quote unquote pass, internally denying my struggles with my mental health, anxiety, and PTSD as a disability. My identity as a disabled student was something that was given to me, informed externally in the first grade, when my teacher in a private school, a K-8 Lutheran school I attended, found and reported that I was defiant because I was unable to copy Bible verses from the board to my notebook, which is still something difficult, and I was marked as delayed. They asked my parents if they felt that I needed to be retained. In that process, I was moved to a public school, and in meeting my new first grade teacher, Miss Wise, I could feel the imposed shame that eventually imposed by adults on me, I internalized. And people around me were saying, it's okay to be held back, you just learn differently, you're not stupid. But ultimately, it became this internalized shame that I held. So interestingly enough, through K-12, I continuously felt like an outsider. I was placed as an outsider in general education. I was pulled out for supports, and in these supports, I was placed in English language learner classes, meaning I was an outsider there too. This feeling of outsider was internalized. It's not good enough. Shame and disclosure were both built into the system for me without me. In undergraduate, I started and it was tough. I requested accommodations and I was met with a system denying my accommodations due to lack of documentation, which I will discuss later. So with that rejection, my request felt invalidated and I felt like, again, I needed a pass. When I got to my master's, that shame continued, and I heard things from friends and parents and family like, you're lucky you got in, don't mess up this opportunity, kind of like, don't let them see who you really are, and setting my value for me. And so again, I wanted to pass. And I remember early on, I had a supervisor that said they thought I was an uninterested student due to my performance and didn't know I had some other things going on. And they said they wish they had told them earlier about my struggles. And in that, what they were saying was, if I told them earlier about my disability, they would have given me accommodation. So again, I needed to disclose in an effort to get accommodation. So in my PhD to this day, I still struggle with disclosure. As you can tell, I'm really nervous right now, and communicating with supervisors about my mental health and needs due to the shame and fear have been reinforced through experiences of rejection. So breathe. On this PowerPoint, the slide is a background depicting people with visible disabilities and a quote in a white box that defines disability disclosure as a complex and ongoing process requiring decisions about who should know, why they should know, how to inform, what to disclose, and when to inform. This definition assumes an individual is in a position to name or label their disability, which for me has taken a long time. Disability disclosure is not a singular event, but an ongoing process of performing and negotiating in different settings and contexts. For people with visible disabilities, they don't have the luxury of choice to disclosure, and they face that discrimination automatically. Like with coming out of the closet, where having a disability creates a having disability creates a dynamic where there are people who are in and people who are out, the people who know and the people who don't know. And in doing this, it honestly feels like coming out of the closet again. So the fear of disclosure is a reoccurring fear. So go ahead, next slide. Thank you. So on this slide, I have a shiny skeleton key entering a hole and a quote. And that skeleton key is kind of representing this idea that disclosing your disability will gain you access to accommodation. So, excuse me, the quote reads, with disability, consent is no longer a given choice. Instead, one must disclose in order to gain access, which often involves not mutual understanding, but an imbalanced and imposed sense of power between parties involved. So in a real world, disclosure would not be the key to accommodations. Students may not know that they are learning with a disability. They may not be ready to disclose, and they may be unaware of means to disclose and should still have access to accommodations. So I recommend everybody read, here I have it listed, Problematizing Disability Disclosure in Higher Education, Shifting Towards a Liberating, Humanizing Intersectional Framework. This really helped me with my own processing of my own identity. So before I pass this off, I hope that in sharing this, people can reflect on individualistic complexity of disability identity and know that it's not as simple as disclosure equals a gating of accommodations. So I'm going to now pass it over to Mike to speak.
Okay, thank you so much, Chloe. I appreciate it. So my name is Mike McKee. My identity, I identify myself as a deaf, white, Latino male. I wear a cochlear implant on my right side, and I'm over at the University of Michigan, Department of Family Medicine. And also just to describe my background, I'm in a small office, home office, and wearing a long dress shirt with blue, white stripes. Anyway, so wanted to just talk from the perspective of my personal experiences and also now moving into now a mentoring role. So it's really important that we need to move away from this negative aspect of disability. You've heard a lot of people still have this very ableist negative perspective of disability, but in reality, we need individuals, trainees, students, faculty members who have a disability to be part of our biomedical healthcare team. We bring so much to the table. And so it needs to be changed to more of a positive aspect. And this quote from Jordan, President Jordan Cohen, who's a former president of the WAMC, is a really powerful quote. And it's wanted to just read this briefly. It is a simple matter of social justice and equity that our healthcare professional community mirrors society, also in the inclusion of decisions with disabilities. So when you think about who we care for in our clinics, hospitals, we actually see not only just a quarter of our patients with disabilities, but people with chronic conditions. Many of that, we offer a unique perspective. We offer a level of empathy, diverse viewpoints, and we can connect with many of these individuals, and we need to be part of that table. So it's important that we think about our disability is not a burden, but an aspect to celebrate and to incorporate. So next slide, please. So I greatly benefit from really key mentorships. I had mentors who also were deaf family medicine physician. Dr. Sasso was what I consider a life mentor. And so it's really critical to have somebody that also shares a similar identity, has a similar, identified disability to help navigate through the pitfalls, barriers, and the negative environment that we often struggle against. And there are other mentors who may not have a disability, but are champions, advocates, who may give you networking opportunities to be able to move ahead. And mentorship is so valuable, and that's part of the reason why we set this program. If you look at people, especially in academic careers, the lack of mentoring has been mentioned as either being the top or second most important factor in impacting career success. So it really is a make or break. And I believe that it's even more vital and more essential for us who are students, trainees, even early careers, who are actually trying to move ahead, advance in our careers. We need these mentors, but we need to be able to find those champions and the correct mentors to work with us. And so there's a couple of keys, obviously, has already been highlighted earlier, is navigating barriers, the know-how, skill building, networking, support, and opportunities. But advocating is one that I do feel is an item that's missed, but it's extremely valuable for students and trainees who have a disability. And I just wanted to kind of give a couple of stories. So I actually had an example. So personally, I still use a sign language interpreter, especially for grand rounds, large meetings, just as hard to follow, especially in a group format. And so as a result, people know that I use that. And so I'm often contacted to, quote, get the cost of interpreters. And so I actually was contacted actually about a year or so ago about how much does it cost? How is it covered? And this was in regard to a health professional student who is applying. And, those are obviously things that mentors have to say, you know what, this is the wrong approach, because what it's doing is it's making this be part of the decision making on whether the applicant can be accepted or not. So what that needs to be done is we need to highlight and say, this is wrong. What we need to do is say, this is sounds like it's a great applicant. And then after the applicant is coming accepted, figure out how we can make this work. And we can talk about strategies, ways to cover it. It should not be that early part before acceptance. And unfortunately, it's an experience that myself, many other deaf and hard of hearing individuals struggle with. And it does affect that feeling of comfort, whether to disclose or not. And we need to change that. The other thing is in terms of having the students and trainees be part of the picture, we do more. We provide a level of empathy that's hard to teach for other students. And so we need to be part of the healthcare team. A second point I wanted to make is that mentors should be viewed as a leader and set the example. We need to set the bar high. We need to welcome students and trainees with disabilities in our clinical and also research programs. We need to provide opportunities for mentees to get training and networking experiences. And so, when we think about mentors providing that emotional support, I know that's a valuable aspect, but we need to do more. We need to create those experiences, work experiences. We need to give them opportunities to participate in the project, whether it's a publication potential, or have them come for an internship or even precept in our clinic. And so what we need to do is walk the walk. And so that's an aspect that mentors, especially with or without a disability, but trying to make sure they have a diverse research and also clinical workforce. And we need to do that. The other thing is the opening of clinical shadowing and precepting opportunities is another area that we need to do better. Unfortunately, we've had some examples across the country, and some of them reach out to me trying to find a home where they can get these experiences. And one health professional student who's deaf struggled to find a clinical home, and actually had a list of preceptors that were identified by the school. and contacted through, and they found out that the applicant was deaf, and they refused to say it just was not a right fit. That unfortunately happens even today, and it's a common experience that we have. So fortunately, we were able to provide an opportunity for the applicant to come over to our clinic, but we have to advocate, we have to fight and make sure that those experiences do not happen. While it takes time to make those changes, we need to make sure that we give those opportunities so they're not delaying their learning and training experiences as well. And then the third point I want to do is a lot of times it's really educating others. And so we need to educate. There's still a lot of ignorance across campus in an academic area, even with the Americans with Disabilities Act. That's just unacceptable, just because we really should be leaders. And what we have to do is sometimes we even have to advocate for mentees, students, trainees. We need to get into the fray and say, this is not acceptable. This is what needs to happen. We have obviously a power, a privilege that students and trainees do not have. And so we need to leverage it and be an advocate for the students and trainees with disabilities. So I want to stop there and pass on to the next speaker. Thank you.
Hey everyone, this is Meredith again. Thank you, Mike and Chloe. Our next topic is accommodations and asking for help. We're going to be joined by Chloe again, who did such a wonderful job of explaining the complexity of disclosure for those of us with disabilities. And Chloe will be joined by Dr. Courtney Fesky, who is a clinical assistant professor in the School of Public Health in the Department of Health and Wellness Design at Indiana University, Bloomington. Dr. Fesky's research aims to promote empowerment, voice, and advocacy with an emphasis on respecting lived experience through exploration of sport environments for individuals with disabilities and enhancement of evidence-based practices.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, I'm trying to get my view right. There we go. Hi, everyone. This is Chloe again. I'm here to follow up on disability disclosure to talk a little bit about accommodation. So the PowerPoint depicted here has a gray arrow above a rope suspension bridge. There are 3 light orange boxes that are located over the gray arrow listing steps to formal accommodation. First, locate services. Second, request accommodations. Third, gain accommodations. Below each of the 3 boxes are 3 orange traffic cones representing barriers and/or burdens that fall on the student requesting accommodation. So as we go through this slide, I'm going to talk about each of the steps. Something we need to keep in mind is that accommodation occurs at any time in a student's education. It's not something that's set and continues throughout, but will differ from context and situation. A lot of the time as a student with a disability, it kind of feels like a show me your papers and you'll get what you need. And it's not as simple as that. And I think as faculty members, the farther you get away from experiences we had in our undergrad, and the more we forget how difficult it was. And even more so, if it wasn't difficult for you, it's really easy to minimize a student's experience and forget to listen to their difficulties. And often I hear faculty justify the struggle in my time, it was so much harder. And I think we need to step back and meet individuals for who they are and not for what we've experienced. So when students are continuously met with this skepticism, they experience access fatigue, and it really deters them from continuing to try to seek out accommodations. So to break down these 3 steps, we'll start with locate services. So first, the student must seek out services. They have to disclose their disability, meaning they have to acknowledge their identity of having a disability, and they have to be eligible under Section 504. So institutions request specific documentation, and it's good to know that this documentation is specific to institution, meaning it differs from institution to institution. And if the documentation is insufficient, the student must schedule and pay for new evaluation. So the burden of this falls on the student. So once you get past that and just identifying what you need, you have to request an accommodation. So you work with a school's disability support coordinator, 504 coordinator, ADA coordinator, whatever that school is going to call it, to try to develop an accommodation plan. As a student, we request accommodation in writing, which the student must disclose the disability. So some items that kind of expedite the process that might be important to know for your students is, in writing, they should describe how the disability affects participation, identify specific accommodations needed, a date you expect a response for the accommodation request. If possible, obtaining a letter of support from medical professional familiar with the individual or the disability can be greatly beneficial. But again, that burden falls on the student. Third, if all of that goes through, you can gain accommodation. But unlike accommodation in K through 12, it's less formal than IEPs or Section 504 plans. Accommodations at a post-secondary level will not be personal in nature. A school will not provide a tutor, personal attendant, or personal computer or software. So from undergraduate to graduate school, accommodations also change. And as you get higher up, the more the accommodations drift away. So we have to remember too, employment spaces, accommodations will also be different. As a mentor, you may play a role as a mentor and an employer. And as a student, I'm a student and an employee. And it's not contained within the classroom. The classroom accommodation translation to employment accommodations are different and may be unscripted. Time on a test and alternative formats of material are common accommodations, whereas employment, there aren't clearly defined accommodations and need to be more personalized to individual and work responsibilities, may require more negotiation from employee to employer. So in my personal experience through K-12, my supports were given to me, my accommodations were done for me. I was not asked to self-identify because they had already identified for me. These were things that carried from the retention and low exam scores as I failed to perform on standardized testing. So in undergrad, I got to college and I was like, yay, I made it. School was hard, but I was making it through until I got to a sociology of culture class. And I needed extra time on the exam. I really wasn't able to read through all of the information in the allotted time. And so I was told that I needed to go to accessibility services. And I failed to obtain the documentation after waiting for an opening at Kaiser, and I finally got the test after the term was over. I completed the initial part of the exam and then kind of pulled a Chloe and missed the follow-up confirmation appointment. And so after that, I kind of gave up, and my shame of like where I fit outweighed my need for accommodation. And so when I got to my master's and I asked for extra time on tests, I was met with comments like, you're my least favorite kind of student because you shut down when you're overwhelmed. And again, I felt like my uniqueness in learning was rejected and summed up as a difficult student instead of a student who learns differently. And so in continuing through my PhD, this is something I really continue to work on, but I acknowledge that I do hold value and that I do hold worth for accommodation, and that me asking for accommodation is not outside of what the real world is. It is the real world, and meaning accommodation is both going to be in academics and in employment. Next slide. All right, so on this slide, I have student perspective accommodation recommendations. Tips for mentors from a student. I have a picture with a stick figure and arrows pointing towards it, listing things like education, sexuality, ability, age, gender, ethnicity, culture, language, class, race. Sorry, I need to slow it down, which just demonstrates the intersectionality of identity. So my number one tip is recognize the individuality of humanity. We are all individuals, we're all unique, and nothing will be the same for anyone. I think in your classroom, the biggest difference and in your mentoring you can make is to normalize accommodations early on. Instead of it being on the student's shoulders to ask, this is what I need, starting a class by saying, these are the options I have for accommodations. I'm happy to negotiate for what you need. And in creating an environment of universal design for learning is one of our best local starts. Be aware of your institution's services and processes in case you need to help a student work through those. It's really hard, and like in my experience, it can be very deterring to students. Remember that when students do speak up and advocate for their needs, their self-empowerment should be encouraged and their autonomy should be encouraged because it takes a lot of effort. And finally, if a lot of this isn't working out, you might want to know the legislation to know what the legal rights for the student or yourself are if accommodations are not being met. I really appreciate the time and space to speak here, and I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Courtney.
Thanks, Chloe. This is Courtney Fesky. I am a white female with long brown hair and glasses. I'm wearing a black shirt and in my home office with gray walls. I use the pronouns she, her, and I identify as having learning disabilities, and I have had mental health diagnoses in my past. So first, I do want to acknowledge Chloe. Thank you so much for sharing your lived experience. I think that's honestly the best way to learn, and to just sit and listen to what people have gone through. I can definitely relate as a former student with disabilities. So my slide that I'm sharing, this one, is a blue background with some colorful kind of headings and some bullet points. So I'm going to give more of a mentor perspective since I'm now in the mentor position. And so I always encourage students who have any health condition or disabilities to register at the Disability Student Services Office or Disability Resources Center, whatever they're calling it at your university. And so it's helpful as a mentor to know what services your university provides loosely. It's not your job to be an expert and know everything, but you should know generally how to refer students, who to refer students to, and what resources that you can offer. So keep in mind too that this can be very stressful. Emotionally, it can be financially burdensome. It can be a very time-consuming process for a student to go through, especially if they don't have a diagnosis already or a label that's been given to them. Because like Chloe shared, you have to go through all of this testing. A lot of time you're paying out of pocket, and it can take a long time. So as a mentor, as a professor, support your students if they're going through this process. They might need some additional support, compassion, and patience from you during that time. Let students know that when they register for disability services, that they'll likely meet with the disability specialist or whatever they're called at your university. The student can advocate for themselves and does not need to be passive in that meeting. They're welcome to bring a parent, a friend, take notes, talk to a mentor before going in. They can go in and say, this is what I need and this is what I want. But also listen to the disability specialist, because hopefully they're there because they are a specialist and they have a strong background in providing accommodations for students, and in reading what might be helpful for them. So most disability student services will have resources available to students. They might have computer programs, adaptive software that it depends on the program, but sometimes they'll be able to offer free programs. There might be tutoring or test proctoring, for example, and some of these services aren't even disability specific. So I'd say if you are like a faculty member, for example, consider thinking about what resources they have just for students at your university and include those on the syllabus. Because those aren't disability specific, but if a student needs a tutor, whether they have a disability or doesn't, make it easy for them. Say, here's the information. This is what you need to do to access these services. And then as a faculty at a university, you may have access. So it depends on kind of how you can get access to information for your classes. So I suggest trying to make your materials as accessible as possible, so that if a student needs accommodations, they are already in place. So for example, if you're uploading articles and want students to read them, make sure that they can be read by a screen reader. If you have pre-recorded lectures or slides, make sure that there's closed captioning on them. And these are simple things that just make it more inclusive and easier for everyone in the class to learn. And something that I found frustrating being a newer faculty member is that I've been told that sometimes there's modifications or accommodations that I want to use just in general for a course to make my content more accessible, but it would cost money to do so. And I've been told that unless a student registers for my class with that specific accommodation, that I don't need to do that, which is frustrating for me. So not that it is the student's responsibility in any way, but it actually is really beneficial if I have a student that says I need these accommodations, because then I can use it for the entire class. So students might not realize that through their accommodations, it can actually make the class better for everyone. So some of these modifications may take time when you start doing them, but I like to think that by being inclusive, I'm setting a welcoming tone and leading by example to students with and without disabilities. And hopefully they will think about possibly doing some of these practices within their own professional careers beyond the classroom. And then another consideration is that even if a student doesn't think they will need any accommodations, by registering, this creates a safety net that's in place. So I know a lot of students, for example, they feel ostracized or they're not sure about a disability identity when they're K through 12. And they're like, I'm going to college, I'm starting brand new, I don't want this coming with me. And so that's totally okay, but I do encourage registering just because then everything's in place if you need it or if you want it. As Chloe shared, it can take several weeks and a really long time to implement these things. So if it's there, it's there. And if you don't use it, that's fine. But if you do use it, that's absolutely wonderful that it's there for you and ready to go. And so accommodations cannot be applied retroactively. So if a student does not register and then they need accommodations, like I said, it can take a long time, which is just upsetting for the student, upsetting as a faculty member because you want them to have these services because they're entitled to it. And then something important too is to never ask a student to explain themselves. We talked about disclosure earlier, so I won't go into it too much, but it can be very nerve-wracking and embarrassing for a student to have to disclose, and you have to disclose to get resources. And it's an unfortunate process. And I'll talk about some benefits in my next slide though, to advocating for yourself and for having these services though. But as a faculty member, I never need to know a student's narrative. I just need to know what I can do to support their learning. And if you're worried as a faculty member, as a mentor to provide necessary accommodations appropriately, you can meet with the disability specialist on your own at your school and say, how do I make my classroom better? How do I be more accommodating for everyone? And then keep in mind that even if a necessary accommodation adds a bit more work for you, so for example, if you have to add extended time or meet with the student extra, think about what the student has to do. They're doing a lot of extra work, unfortunately. They're having to perform their disability, get the testing, the accommodations, get the label, verify that they have that disability, meet with the disability specialist, make sure that they're disclosing that they have accommodations to you. So it's something they're entitled to. And I think it's something that we should all strive to just create an inclusive environment. And then I also recommend the same advice if you're mentoring undergraduate, graduate, or PhD students. I think it was mentioned before, but disabilities don't disappear as we gain education or we gain experience. A lot of times our students are successful because they've had these accommodations, so we don't need to rip them away. Something I actually used personally is as a doctoral candidate, I took my preliminary exams with extended time, the written exam. So instead of the 3-day period, I think I had 5 days. I had time and a half for the exam, and it was really helpful. And it also gave my committee and my advisor extra time to read through my work. So it was kind of a win-win situation. And then if I can go to the next slide, and I'll be quick because I think I'm about at my time. So this next slide is just when somebody comes to me and says, here's my letter of accommodations, I wanted to share what I perceive is going on, which as a mentor, I see a student demonstrating the skills of autonomy, being proactive in their education, and practicing self-advocacy. I think these are great skills for students to have and that they will transfer to their professional development. When students reach out to me about accommodations, I get the opportunity to get to know the student. I typically have hundreds of students in a semester, and unless a student reaches out to me or makes an effort to connect about course materials or outside of class, I don't get to know my students. But by sharing about a need for an accommodation, this can be a pivotal contact point to start building a relationship. And then also as a professor with disabilities, I appreciate and want to encourage and support any students that also have disabilities in academia and my professional areas. I personally want to support students with disabilities because I was a student with a disability, and I know how important it can be to have a kind and supportive mentor for your academic and professional development. So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, but happy to answer questions in the Q&A portion. But lastly, just I know firsthand that it can be uncomfortable to ask for help. But remember, accommodations provide equitable educational experiences. It's the student's right. It's not a privilege. It's not something nice you're doing for that person. It's their right to have these accommodations to help with support their education and their learning. They're not an unfair advantage. They're not an imposition, and students are entitled to have the opportunity to succeed in their education. So just support those students and let them know that. I know as a former student with disabilities, I was always like, oh my gosh, thank you, please, and being like overly polite and having gratitude that I was being offered these services. That's pleasant and nice, but they should be there. It's what they're entitled to. So don't make the student have to like think that they're not worth being in that classroom, because they deserve to be in that classroom and they deserve the same ability to succeed as everyone else in that classroom. And up next are Meredith and Dat with self-determination and alternative paths and timelines. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation. It's so great to hear from your experience on asking for accommodation and what resources are available. The next topic, as Courtney said, it's going to be on self-determination and alternative paths and timelines. And the speakers are Meredith Williams and Dr. Dotneri. Meredith, we have heard from in the beginning on making the case, and she also introduced the previous speakers. Dr. Dotneri is an assistant research professor at the Research and Training Center on the Independent Living at the University of Kansas. Her research interests focus on community participation, health promotion, and advocacy training for people with disabilities, and on creating accessible communities for all. Dr. Neri has been active in leadership of the disability section of the American Public Health Association and served as a founding staff advisor for Able Hogs and Allies, the student group dedicated for raising disability awareness and increasing access at the Kansas University. Dr. Neri is currently serves as the Kansas University Faculty and Staff Council on Disability Inclusion. With that, I will give the floor to Meredith and Dr. Neri.
And this is Bridget. I'm just going to chime in with a note to our presenters. We are running over our initial timeline. So if you have areas you can cut out, we have plans for future webinars that we can add it in. We do lose our interpretation and CART services at 2:30. So please be mindful in your delivery. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I'm an older white female with reddish brown hair, brown glasses, wearing a pink shirt. My background is a home office with a plant I've managed to keep alive for about 10 years. My pronoun are she, her, hers, and I will read from notes because I've had several strokes, and reading from notes is an accommodation. So let me first say, too often programs seem as though they're created for the survival of the fittest and are daunting for students with disabilities. Programs often fail to recognize that for a person with a disability to survive and thrive, that person must develop skills and tremendous resilience to negotiate or remove barriers that impede their progress. It's self-determination that allows students and early career professionals to navigate educational systems successfully while simultaneously maintaining their health and well-being. So I'll refer to the slide now. We've got a stylized depiction of the word self-determination, which is a combination of attitudes and abilities that lead people to set goals for themselves and to take the initiative to reach those goals. In order to succeed in their education and future careers, research shows that self-determined students and EC early career professionals accept their disability and understand how it affects learning and achievement, understand when and which accommodations are needed, know how to describe their disability and the need for accommodations, and have the determination to overcome barriers they may encounter. So, successful mentoring of disabled students and early career professionals involves respecting their knowledge of their own disabilities, understanding that timelines and career trajectories must be different or change periodically, providing support when barriers are encountered, and suggesting ways to navigate these barriers. This was true 20 years ago when I had a stroke 1 year into my doctoral program. I already had an unusual career trajectory as I began grad school at age 40. I already had a disability from birth and used a wheelchair. The stroke added another layer of complexity to my situation. It was my self-determination that allowed me to figure out what was feasible, what needed to change, how to advocate for that change, and how to keep moving forward in my educational goals. A mentor who did not understand this would not have been helpful to me. So now I'd like to turn it over to Meredith Williams, who will share her personal experiences. Meredith?
Hi, everyone. This is Meredith again. Thank you, Dot, for that wonderful summary of what self-determination is and why it's important. Thinking about my own journey and preparing for this webinar today, I wanted to share a little bit about what self-determination means to me and what it looks like in my life. And to me, I think self-determination means being able to make my own decisions, set my own goals, and have some control over when and how I reach those goals. I'm a PhD student who lives with chronic illness and disability. I have a rare genetic autoinflammatory condition and an immune deficiency that affects my energy, concentration, and productivity on a day-to-day basis, but it's also very unpredictable and can get worse very suddenly. So that means that I'm not always in control of my own schedule or my own timeline, and I can't always necessarily count on my body and brain to be in good working order when I need it to be on any given day. So I work with my disability pretty successfully by going to school part-time. I participate virtually whenever possible. I really plan ahead and stay organized, and I start all of my projects and assignments early. And that way I perform very well and can deliver some very high quality work. I think a good example of the importance of self-determination would be my journey through undergrad. I've been navigating higher education now for about 17 years through undergrad, master's, PhD. It took me 9 years and 4 different universities to get through undergrad, mostly because of a lack of understanding of chronic illness and disability and the accommodations and considerations that students like me need. So many programs that can be inflexible, require you to be on campus, participate in person, take a certain number of credits, have some inflexible policies and procedures. At one university I attended, I became very ill, as happens, and everyone got together. My counselor, who was supposed to oversee accommodations, my physician, my professors, and together they decided and recommended to me that I withdraw rather than offering me the accommodations I needed to stay in school. And I think they made that decision with what they thought were my best interests in mind and with good intentions, but it wasn't what I wanted. It was very discouraging to me because I still wanted to learn, to be with my peers, to feel a sense of purpose and gain skills and make a meaningful contribution to my community and to society. So contrasting that with, eventually I found a university that catered to non-traditional students, so I could participate in ways that worked best for me and knew would help me succeed. So I could go to class part-time, online, hybrid. There was a stronger system for applying for, requesting, and receiving accommodations. And there I graduated with my undergraduate degree, even after changing my major in 3 years and at the top of my class. So while students like me can't always accomplish things the way that everyone else does, we are able to accomplish things in the ways that work for us. You know, most chronic illness and disabilities can't be cured or completely overcome, but there are many ways that we adapt to and work with them. Our paths and our timelines might look a little bit different. So if we're applying to a job, our CVs might look different than other applicants. It might take us longer to get through school. There might be multiple transfers in there. There might be gaps in school and work. The ways we've touched on this earlier that we are assessed aren't always good measures of how skilled and knowledgeable and capable we really are. So for example, measures of productivity and standardized testing might not be an accurate reflection of what we can contribute. But to me, these inconsistencies or differences are really markers of our persistence, our tenacity, our motivation, and our ability to be flexible and creative problem solvers and still find a way through systems that were never designed to include us in the first place. So self-determination is very important for students like me to be successful in the ways that we define our own success, as well as the way that success is defined by those around us. And on this slide, I have a image of a disability pride symbol. It's a purple silhouette of a raised fist with the words disability pride at the bottom. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to transition over to the next topic, which is allyship and co-conspirators. We're going to be joined again by Sarita, and we'll also be joined by Dr. Meg Ann Tracy, who is the past chair of the APHA Disability Section and a research associate professor at the University of Montana. Dr. Tracy had the opportunity to train as a developmental psychologist at the time when public health began to shift its frameworks to improve health and participation with people with disabilities. As a result of these opportunities, Dr. Tracy has nearly 30 years of experience working with the disability community to support this paradigm shift within public health and to co-produce actionable solutions with the disability community to advance social justice and health equity.
Thank you so much. And this is Sarita again, and I would like to draw your attention to our land acknowledgements and for respect of time. Next slide. And to center our conversation in allyship and co-conspirators, I want to read this quote out. And we need partners more than we need innovators or entrepreneurs, joining an effort already underway instead of centering yourself and your own ideas can be hard. Sometimes it's a sacrifice, but it's the true essence of allyship, or it's the essence of true allyship. Next slide, and on to you, Meg.
Thanks, Sarita. So I'm Meg Tracy, and I'm a middle-aged white woman in Missoula, Montana. I identify as non-disabled and as an ally and co-conspirator. So this quote really struck us. You know, being a good partner means that we share values. And so we've included just a couple resources from the National Council on Independent Living, and also another article that details a lot of resources from disability-led organizations that articulate what the disability rights movement includes in terms of values. And I would say my role is to talk about being an ally and co-conspirator. You know, this is essential, that I'm always doing my best to center these values in the opportunities I have to work on public health issues and to work with the disability community. The second part is that in all the opportunities that are afforded to me, that I'm always thinking about how to center those with leadership of the disability community. That as a PhD developmental psychologist, I might be invited to participate in a project or a program, and I just have to check and say, you know, no, this really needs to be led by the disability community, and particularly to put forward the emerging voices in disability advocacy and leadership. And I just want to say how much I've appreciated the prior comments. In lieu of time, I'm going to really give my time for Q&A, and some of the folks who've been articulating some really great viewpoints in the chat. But I just want to say that I see as my role as an ally who's had these opportunities to work for 30 years, that when I hear students talking about their individual concern, I have the opportunity to raise it as this is a shared concern by a community, and to put that forward, not in just an individual response. Sorry, I get emotional about this stuff, but to really say, this is what's wrong with our field. This is what's wrong with our organization. This is what's wrong with our class, and we can change. So just really moved by the voices today, sorry. So being an ally, being a co-conspirator is being open to listening and being open to transforming, not only for the relationship you might have with a person with a disability, but in the relationship that your organization, your field has with the disability community.
Thank you so much, Meg. I can't tell you how much your heart means for the disability community. And I really find that as a disabled student, as a disabled undergrad, there's such a balance between wanting allies and not completely trusting people, because there's a certain form of trauma of being a disabled student that you've gone through in this constant ableism, constantly being excluded. And as an ally and co-conspirator, I want to draw your attention to these suggestions on how you can really help and acknowledge a place where a disabled student may be running out of financial aid, not having resources on campus because there's not anything beyond accommodations and accessibility, and they may feel alone, isolated, and constantly attacked as someone, as a person with disabilities, as a disabled person where ableism runs rampant. And being a catalyst of creating spaces for all of us to be together as not just disabled students, but disabled staff, disabled faculty, and disabled alumni to support each other. And that's really the charge of my nonprofit. And really respecting the skepticism that we have that may come from that trauma response as well, because of just how much pain we've had to deal with as disabled students, going through not only our education that every other student has to go through, but the accommodations process that Chloe so eloquently outlined, that's full of barriers and potholes and compounded barriers that we may not know. And I will pass off to Meg for the last 2 slides, and then we'll try to get into a Q&A.
And this is Meg. I just want to see, Bridget, if we can give some of the folks who've been on the chat an opportunity to say something. I'm happy to share this information later, but I just want to know that we're closing up and we've got some final comments.
Yes, we can. Thank you, Meg, if you don't mind. I do also want to go through the reminders really quickly, and then have some people. I want to let everyone know that we do have, I just put a link in the chat that has our slides, the full slides. It has these key takeaways from each section. There's also a handout on there that has these key takeaways and these additional resources. And so these are available to everyone. I am going through them really fast. And then just let you know, here is the information for the mentor program if anyone is interested in mentoring or being a mentee. And we do look at future webinars expanding on these topics. And we also have a Twitter conference for students and early career professionals that all the students, if you're interested in, and career professionals join in, and mentors share with your mentees. So that would be the end of our presentation today. I'm sorry we rushed through. This is great content that just takes time and never enough time. But we would, if anyone has any questions, you can drop them into the chat. I plan on collecting any of the questions from the chat, and we can answer that in an email I'll send out to all attendees after. You can drop them there or come off now, but Anna, you could also tell me, let me know about the CART and interpreter services. Don't want to overstep our welcome. But thank you everyone for joining us. And yes, we probably have like 2 minutes for comments if anyone would like to add anything. Please.
Hi, this is Preeti Zanwar. Thank you so much for this excellent webinar. I was just hoping to get some clarification for accurately filling my job applications, whether I should disclose myself as a person with disability or not. They have questions on diabetes. They also have questions about certain surgeries, and someone replied in the chat that you should, but I'm just wondering, I don't want to say something that is inaccurate, but what is a good accurate way to disclose whether or not you are a person with disability or not, especially when it's related to the job applications and they have identified information as diabetes considered as one of the measures.
So this is Meg Tracy. I think our Centers for Independent Living are great resources for those questions and how to interact, particularly with local employers, and then also the Job Accommodations Network. And I'm going to put that link in the chat if you're not familiar with Jan. There may be resources there. And I'm sure that presenters would welcome direct conversations as well. Sorry to be brief, but Dot or Mike or others, do you have comments?
There's two comments from panelists in the chat. Mike says, oh, I'll let you, I just saw you come off video, Mike. Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with the comment, Ms. Sarita. That is, this is deeply personal. So, some of us may be more comfortable in disclosing it. I feel, more of us opening up, it kind of, normalizes and people are more aware. It kind of gets, us away from this, this is a rare thing or it's a negative thing. But we have colleagues, other friends, contacts that have this. And I think when one opens up, others recognize to say, oh, that's also me too. So, and the other reason is really just double checking if there are accommodations or needs to be able to, help with the job, with the performance. That would be another critical element to consider too. Thanks.
I will ask everyone to put their additional questions in the chat. Kashana, feel free to come off and just introduce yourself briefly now, but I'm also happy to get your email address and we can set up an opportunity for you to speak with some of our panelists in the future. I know there's a lot of great interactions in the chat, so I want you to get that opportunity. Realize we don't have it, all of it.
Hi, I'm Kashana. My screen is off. I just want to say that I am a 19-year-old autistic deaf Black woman, who is very, very passionate about talking about disability because I am just fed up and up to here with how society treats disabled people. And I'm not saying there isn't any change. It's just you need to bring action to your words, And I feel like there's no action being brought. There's no headline news. I'm not saying it needs to be headline news, but there needs to be accurate representation about disability in general. There needs to be understanding of disability. There needs to be no ableism, no racism, no discrimination, because it is not always up to us disabled people to have to educate other people about us and representing us into society. I have so much I want to say, but I know, we don't have enough time and I'm trying to get everything out. But all I want to say is disability is yours to own. Once again, it is yours to own. Nobody ever has the right to take that away from you. I don't care if that's like the president, the highest level of government official. But it needs to be changed, and change needs to happen now, not 10 years from now, not 20 years from now. It needs to happen now. I'm sick of society walking over us. I'm sick of society shunning us, locking us, secluding us. I'm sick of it. That stuff needs to stop. Once again, I'm going to end this with me saying change needs to happen now. Not tomorrow, not next week, not next month, not next year. Now. Ableism should be a crime. It should be a straight up crime.
And I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your voice as a Black disabled woman as well. I cannot say how hard it is to be constantly accosted in our society. And change does need to happen now. And that takes not just disabled individuals, it takes our allies and co-conspirators to actually be right there with us, just as much as white people were there during the Black Lives Matter protesters, standing in front of them, in between the police and the protesters to protect them. And disabled students need each of you to stand with us. So thank you all for being here today. And I'm also our communication student co-chair for our Twitter, so please feel free to continue mentioning us, use this mentoring to share any insights you've had from our session today. And I will hand it back to Bridget.
Yeah. So thank you so much for everyone for joining. We really appreciate all the voices that chimed in. I appreciate all the panelists that shared their stories today. It's very personal and isn't always easy. So I learned a lot, and also this is recorded, so feel free to share this with your friends, with your colleagues, share this across. We developed this in order to use this today, but also in the future. And also feel free to let us know if there's something more that we need to cover or should cover. Yeah, that's it. Thanks so much. And everyone have a great day.